Tonight on 5 News, the truth behind the 28% rise in crime on our streets. Sogat refugee camp will close within 8 months. We take a look inside the Hold Navy destroyer as divers start to patch her up.
For some reason, I don't have a right to talk about anything because I got caught 4 years ago with a police officer in a Los Angeles toilet.
And George Michael on how his new pop video has made him a hate figure for America. Carjacking, burglary, robbery, rape, drug offences, prostitution and murder. According to new government figures, all those crimes are on the rise in England and Wales. It means that 10 crimes have been committed in every minute of the past 12 months. That's one crime every 6 seconds. According to today's figures, crime reported to the police rose by 7% over the last 12 months. But officials were quick to point out that the numbers were swollen by minor offences, which until recently didn't count. These are the figures you need to know. Street crime in England and Wales has increased by 28% over the past year. Violent crime was up by 11%. And overall, police recorded 5.5 million crimes in England and Wales. That's over 356,000 more crimes than the previous year. These statistics also show that half of all robbery takes place in just 20 local council areas. Well, one of those robbery hotspots is the city of Bristol, from where 5's Ben Ando sent this report.
I still get nightmares. Large groups of youths tend to scare me. They don't really come through this way unless I can get a lift, or I won't walk through here anymore.
31-year-old Jonathan Soden was heading home from work in the evening when he became a crime statistic. A brutal mugging left him with broken ribs and a deep head wound where he was beaten with a metal bar.
I had a push bike, I had a bag with me. They left that all behind. Didn't take that now, so for whatever reason it was, I don't really know.
This, the St Paul's area of Bristol, in some ways acts as a snapshot for the entire UK. This underpass under the M32 motorway has seen in the last 6 weeks 2 rapes and many muggings. In fact, in this area, street crime is up by 77%. Even the man running the local off-licence is thinking of closing his shop and turning it into flats because of all the robberies.
I've had one time somebody put a broken glass on my throat. I've had somebody come down here with a knife on my throat. I've had a person with a gun pointed at my head.
Now locals have had enough, and tomorrow they're planning a demonstration to demand action.
We want our streets clean, the police to be here on foot, people we can talk to and who can keep a cap on what's going on in the area. We just want a normal community.
Avon and Somerset police, who declined our request for an interview, were recently given an extra £2 million to tackle robberies. Is that being spent down here at all?
No sign of it at all, no. We have a helicopter, we have cars cruising around, vans with policemen in, waiting to respond to crime, but we don't have anyone on the street attempting, it seems, to intercept the criminals.
Across England and Wales, over half of all robberies occurred in just 20 inner-city areas like this. Some in St Paul's are accusing the police of deliberately abandoning them in the belief that containing criminals here will stop them moving elsewhere. Ben Ando, Bristol, 5 News.
Another set of crime figures was also published today, and surprise, surprise, it paints a slightly different picture. The British Crime Survey asked 33,000 people about their experiences of crime. According to the survey, there were just over 13 million offences against adults last year, an overall fall in crime of 2%. But it did show an increase in street thefts. They were up 88%. Robbery was also up by 17%, but experts warn that the number of people surveyed was so small that the figures are not completely reliable. MPs from all sides were quick to put their own spin on both sets of figures released today. Pi's political editor Andy Bell is in central London for us now. Andy, we've got lots of figures to juggle with today, but ultimately it's all about people, really, isn't it?
It is, and people going home tonight, as they are here in central London this evening, will be wondering, well, what do these figures mean for me? Am I going to be more or less likely to be a victim of crime from what we now know? A word about that British Crime Survey. It's based, as you said, on a sample, 33,000 people. And normally it does give a slightly rosier picture, perhaps, than might otherwise be expected. It does not give a statistical record of every crime that's been committed. That was the first set of figures you gave at the beginning of the programme that comes from the Home Office. And while in those recorded statistics from the Home Office there is some comfort for the government, for instance, on vehicle theft, which seems to be pretty much stable, there is no argument about the headline, if you like, from these figures, which is that big jump in street robbery.
And a lot of people watching this will think that this must mean the government is failing on their much-vaunted promise to get tough on crime.
Well, I think there's no doubt that they have been failing on the issue of street robbery. That's why earlier in the year you had Tony Blair standing up and saying he was going to try and get this under control in London by September. In the government's defence, I was talking, for instance, to the Metropolitan Police today, and they said that in a third of all the recorded street robberies in their area in the last year, in 1/3 of those, only one item was taken, and it was always only a mobile phone. Now, of course, that's still a crime. It can still be upsetting. But that gives you an idea of the kind of new category of crime, if you like, which has come into existence in the last couple of years.
And you give us an idea of what's being done to solve these problems.
Well, it's largely about getting more police onto the streets. The government's got now 128,000 police, it says. The figures are going up. But of course, then it's a question of getting them out of the police stations and onto the streets. And of course, it's also about the system as a whole. People complain that when there are arrests, people don't get convicted. The Home Secretary is promising a review of the criminal justice system next week. But clearly, on the basis of these figures, there's still a long way to go.
Andy, thank you very much. And on 5 News tonight at 7:30, we'll be asking, what do you think can be done to cut crime? Send a text message with your thoughts on this special short number, 84555. It's easy to remember, 84555. You can also pick up a phone and leave a message on 09050 555 555, or drop us an email. And however you get in touch, please leave your name and where you're contacting us from. A timetable has been put in place today for the closure of the Sangatte refugee camp in France. The Home Secretary, David Blunkett, has been meeting with his French counterpart in Paris and announced that it could be closed by the end of the year and by next March at the very latest. James Bays reports.
This warehouse, close to the Channel Tunnels site near Calais, has been at the centre of controversy ever since the refugee camp was first set up 3 years ago. Now the Home Secretary David Blunkett, after a meeting with his French opposite number, has announced a timetable for the closure of the Red Cross Centre. Sangatte will definitely close before the end of March next year, although both countries hope the date could be much sooner, possibly even before the end of this year.
After so many years of disagreement and of difficulty over Sangatte, over the pull factor and over the tremendous controversy in both countries that this has caused, we are on the verge of finding not only a solution in relation to Sangatte, but to the real difficulties of people using clandestine entry into the United Kingdom as an alternative to proper legal economic migration.
Every night groups of people try to get through the tunnel by jumping onto moving trains. It's dangerous, but they're desperate to get to Britain. The majority of the asylum seekers at Sangatte are either from Afghanistan or the Kurdish part of Iraq. The two governments believe Afghanistan is now safe. The Afghans will almost certainly be sent home. It's not clear what will happen to the Kurds, but it's likely they'll be taken in by both Britain and France. British immigration officers will soon start work at Sangatte to help process the refugees. Even though this camp will close, both governments know the underlying problem will not go away. There were asylum seekers at the Channel ports before Sangatte was set up. They'll still be trying to get into the UK after it's closed down. James Bays, 5 News.
More stories making the headlines this evening. The Foreign Secretary says the government is prepared to share sovereignty of Gibraltar with Spain. Jack Straw told the House of Commons that although no definite deal had been made, the two nations were in broad agreement about the future of the ROC. But he said the final decision would rest with the 35,000 residents. The European Commission is considering what action to take over France's failure to lift its illegal ban on British beef. France could now be fined for failing to comply with EC deadline, which passed last night. The French say more scientific evidence is needed to make sure British beef is really free of BSE. More than 100,000 people have gathered on the streets of Belfast for a major parade in the Protestant marching season calendar. The Orange Order marches for July the 12th have so far passed off peacefully, although police are on high alert for possible confrontations. The man who filmed these pictures of a black teenager being beaten up by an LA policeman has been arrested himself. Mitchell Crooks was picked up in Hollywood for alleged offences, including petty theft and a hit-and-run incident. Detectives hunting for the missing teenager Amanda Dowler have enlisted the help of the FBI. They're hoping that potentially crucial footage from a CCTV camera could shed new light on what happened to the teenager. But there's a problem. Glare from the sun obscures the key moment on the shot. It's hoped a special treatment at the FBI's laboratories could make the image clear. Today, police released other parts of the tape in the hope of getting key witnesses to come forward. 5's Catherine Jones reports.
4:06 p.m. March the 21st. A man carrying a guitar walking towards Walton Station in Surrey. 4:08, the same CCTV camera films a woman with blonde hair. 4:10, a cyclist pushes their bike towards the station. 4:11, a group of 4 people head the same way. Those images were taken by the camera mounted on the corner of this building. And the reason the police are so keen for those people to come forward is because they were walking in this direction at precisely the point that Millie Dowler was coming towards them. She was actually last seen by a friend pretty much where that blue people carrier is parked in the distance. And detectives are now convinced that whatever happened to cause her disappearance occurred somewhere in the next 50 yards on this road. They are now almost totally convinced that what happened was that Millie was abducted. And although the release of home videos like this one has prompted thousands of tip-offs and leads, hard evidence has proved almost impossible to come by. The CCTV system at Walton Rail Station was out of order and being fixed when Millie vanished, and the bright sunlight that day has ruined the only other image that may have shown her. Detectives are so desperate for clues from that footage, it's now with the American FBI.
This is a unique inquiry and extremely difficult. Most inquiries, as you'd be aware, have either a body, a scene, a significant witness or a significant suspect. This inquiry has none of those key starting points, if you like. So it has been a very, very challenging investigation.
And an investigation which the police now believe will at some point turn into a murder inquiry. Millie's parents have already been told to prepare for the worst. Catherine Jones, Surrey, 5 News.
We'll take a break in just a moment, but stay with us because coming up, rescue efforts continue to save HMS Nottingham, but is it enough to salvage the stricken ship? And the American backlash that's forcing George Michael to stay away from the States. All that plus the weather where you are. That's your news from 5 News after the break. This is 5 News, it's 5:46. Welcome back. Divers have started trying to patch up the British warship which ploughed into a huge rock off Australia. There's still a major embarrassment for the Royal Navy, which today released pictures of the damage inside HMS Nottingham, and her crew described the moment of impact. This from 5's Peter Lane.
There she blows, the HMS Nottingham, stuck in the waters of Australia after she hit what the ship's captain has called the biggest rock in the world. Cameras have now been allowed on board to see the timber work that's plugging up that very embarrassing hole.
Underneath us, the tank underneath us has a large hole in it, and so effectively we're standing on the new hull. As you can see, we've done a lot of secondary shoring now to make sure that this compartment is as rigid as possible.
When they hit the rock, the crew got a rude awakening. Some thought it was time to bail out or go down with the ship. Today they've been telling their stories for the first time.
Jumped out of bed, everyone was just straight out of bed, everyone who was in bed, everyone was in a mess square, straight out of there, everyone into their OV, steaming bats on, sprinting to their emergency stations, responding to the pipe, and just cracking on, just trying to stop all the water from coming in as quickly as possible, really.
I think that we're extremely lucky to be here now. Afloat. I actually, at one stage, I did think that the ship might sink.
Very shocked, very confused, extremely frightened.
I was pushed down underneath the water twice to locate the hole. When I found it, we tried to bung it up as best we could. Still, the water level was rising and getting higher.
The Nottingham is now watertight, but is going nowhere while repairs continue. An investigation and possible court-martial will decide who carries the can for a rather expensive bit of poor navigating. One thing they'll always have on the ship is a good tale to tell around the captain's table. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Lennox Lewis has led a group of top sportsmen to be honoured at Buckingham Palace today. The world heavyweight boxing champion received a CBE from the Prince of Wales to add to the MBE he's already got for services to boxing. But how did the accolade compare to beating Mike Tyson?
It's different, you know. Knocking out Tyson was more of a pleasure. This is a pleasure as well, but it's two different things. Yeah, it's two different things.
England cricket captain Nasser Hussain and former England manager Graham Taylor also received honours from the Prince. The world motorcycling champion Valentino Rossi suffered concussion and a fractured thumb today after a sensational crash in practice for Sunday's British Grand Prix at Donington Park. The 23-year-old Italian, who's won 6 out of 7 MotoGP races held this season, was taken to hospital in Nottingham after this crash. Sunday's race was scheduled to be his 100th Grand Prix. Rossi's Honda teammate Tohiro Okawa, the only man to have beaten the Italian this year, was also taken to hospital following that smash. George Michael says his latest single has been so badly received in America, he now fears for his life if he goes back there. In his cartoon video for Shoot the Dog, he lampoons the US president. George says it's fair comment, but the US press has called him a past his prime pop pervert, referring back to his arrest in a public toilet in California. Colin Campbell reports on how George and the USA are squaring up.
The United States of America, land of the free. A nation where individuals can say what they want, when they want. A right enshrined in the US Constitution. Unless you're a pop star who takes the mickey out of the president. Shoot the Dog, George Michael's latest pop offering, was meant to be a political satire criticising Tony Blair's relationship with President Bush. In the US, however, it sparks outrage.
They invented the idea of lampooning. It's an American tradition. It's something that they did so that they themselves can attack their own political leaders when they need to.
But it's been branded anti-American. Some radio stations are even banning it.
Obviously, Americans are going to be upset that their patriotic national group hug was interrupted by these sensational images of the president in bed with a foreign leader. And for that criticism to come during the week of Independence Day and for it to come after all that's happened since September 11th is a little bit much.
Michael claims he wrote the song before September the 11th. Despite this, papers across the Atlantic have branded him a past his time pop pervert. The pop star reckons he's being targeted because he's gay.
For some reason, I don't have a right to talk about anything because I got caught 4 years ago with a police officer in a Los Angeles toilet.
The 39-year-old has fled his LA home, fearing for his life.
So if anyone really thinks that I wanted to give up the possibility of going back to my home in America and to actually put myself in danger by being open to misrepresentation, then they're stupid.
You didn't understand a word of that, did you, Mr. President?
Misunderstood in the US, Michael denies it's a publicity stunt. Any attempts to stifle his freedom of speech, he says, will only make him fight harder. Colin Campbell, 5 News.
Just time now to recap on tonight's main headlines. Crime figures released by the Home Office today showed a big leap in street crime, up 28% on last year. The Sangatte refugee camp near Calais will close by the spring of next year, following a deal between Britain and France. And the government says it's willing to share sovereignty over Gibraltar with Spain, but only if voters on the Rock agree. Well, that's it for now. Remember, in our programme tonight at 7:30, we want your views on the news. We'll be discussing today's crime figures. We're asking what should be done to cut the level of crime. Send us a text message on 84555 or ring our voicemail on 09050 555 555. In a moment, we've got the weather. I'll be back with the headlines at 6. Until then, bye-bye.
Channel 5 weather, sponsored by RAC Auto Windscreens. On call, whatever the weather. Whew.
Hello. Well, it's been yet another day of sunshine and showers, although more sunshine than showers, really. And we've got a wet night to go before, for some of us anyway, before things start to improve enormously during the weekend. Well, tonight, longer spells of rain in the southeast, but for the rest of the country, it is staying dry for much of the night. We are going to see a mixture of patchy cloud in places and some clear spells. Some of those clear spells will last most of the night too. Temperature's not too bad, getting up to around 11 degrees in the south. And for the rest of the weekend and into next week, in the north, staying warmer and drier on Saturday and Sunday, though some bad news, a few outbreaks of rain at the start of next week. In central parts, it's going to be warm, dry and sunny right through the weekend and into Monday too. A few showers again on Tuesday though. And in the south, a glorious weekend, warm, sunny, mostly dry, but again, more showers on Tuesday. That's it from me. Enjoy the sunshine at the weekend, won't you?
Channel 5 weather, sponsored by RAC Auto Windscreens. On call, whatever the weather.